Hello YouTube, it's Supernova, and today we're looking at the BENDIXIKING Silver Crown Plus Avionics system in X-Plane 11. The blue, amber and white lights on the faceplate illuminate when passing over a 75 MHz beacon and identify the beacon type as an outer, middle or inner airway marker. An audio tone also identifies the beacon type. The marker audio select button must be pressed to receive an audio signal at beacon passage. When pressed, the green annunciator is illuminated. The marker audio can be silenced with the marker mute button. The audio is automatically reset for the next marker beacon. The marker mute button does not affect the marker beacon lamps. The toggle switch provides two receiver sensitivities, high sensitivity and low sensitivity. In the high position, the outer marker tone can be heard a mile from the marker beacon transmitter. At this point, the low sensitivity position can be selected to temporarily silence the tone. In this position, the tone will sound again when closer to the marker. The toggle switch can be left in the low sensitivity position. Receivers may be selected by pushing the corresponding audio select buttons. Audio selection is available for free communications receivers, two navigation receivers, the internal marker beacon receiver, distance measuring equipment or DME, automatic direction finder or ADF, and auxiliary receivers. The auxiliary position could be used for a second DME or ADF, for example. The green annunciator illuminates at the bottom of the button when a receiver is selected. Press the COM transceiver volume knob to rotate it clockwise from the off to the on position. The left portion of the digital display readout is allocated for COM2 active and COM2 standby frequencies. The desired operating frequency is selected by rotating the frequency select knobs. The outer and inner knobs increment or decrement the frequency in the megahertz and kilohertz portions of the standby display respectively. To tune the radio to the desired operating frequency, enter the desired frequency into the standby display and push the COM frequency transfer button. The active and standby displays are then swapped. The right portion of the display is allocated to NAV2 receiver information. Frequency channeling is similar to the COM operation. Press the on-off volume knob to rotate it clockwise from the off to the on position. The active ADF frequency is displayed in the left side of the window. The standby frequency is displayed on the right when frequency is annunciated. With frequency annunciated, the standby frequency is selected using the frequency select knobs. To tune the 100s, rotate the outer knob. Push the frequency select knob to toggle between tuning the 1s and 10s with the inner knob. Press the frequency transfer button to exchange the standby and active frequencies. Antenna mode is selected when the ADF button is in the out position. Antenna mode provides improved audio reception from the station tuned. The bearing pointer in the KI227 indicator will be deactivated and turn to the 90-degree relative position during antenna reception. Some stations outside the United States are unmodulated and use an interrupted carrier for identification purposes. When the beat frequency oscillator or BFO button is depressed, BFO mode permits the carrier wave and the associated Morse code identifier broadcast on the carrier wave to be heard. Press the flight time elapsed time button to display the associated information. The flight timer continues to count until the unit is turned off. The elapsed timer can be reset to 0 by pressing the Set Reset button. Press the button again to resume counting the elapsed time. The standby frequency may be recalled by pressing the frequency transfer button and transferred to active use by pressing the button again. The BENDIXIKING transponder is a radio transmitter and receiver. It receives ground radar interrogations at 1030 MHz and returns any one of 4096 codes at 1090 MHz. By replying to ground transmissions, aircraft identification, altitude and ground speed can be displayed on en route, approach or departure control radar screens. Pressing the ident button positively identifies your aircraft to the air traffic controller. Rotate the function selector knob to on to power the transponder. Select the proper reply code with the code entry buttons. The reply code will be displayed in the code window. The reply indicator blinks to indicate that the transponder is functioning properly and replying to interrogations. The pressure altitude is shown on the left side of the display. This should not be confused with true altitude. Flight level altitude is marked by the letters FL and a number in hundreds of feet. For example, FL 071 corresponds to an altitude of 7,100 feet. Referenced to 29.92 inches of mercury, or 1013 millibar, at sea level. Mistakes made when entering the reply code are corrected with the clear button. To correct a mistake, press the clear button and enter the correct digit. Press the Visual Flight Rules or VFR button to enter the pre-programmed VFR code in the code window. The function selector knob has 5 positions: off, standby, test, on, and altitude. In the off position, the unit is not receiving power. In the standby position, the unit is powered but does not reply to any interrogation. Standby is shown on the display. In the test position, the unit illuminates all segments of the display for at least 4 seconds, and replies are disabled. In the on position, the unit replies to all valid Mode A, C, and S interrogations, but altitude information will not be transmitted. The altitude window is left blank, the ID code is shown on the right, and ON is shown on the display. In the altitude position, the unit replies to all valid mode A, C and S interrogations, the ID code is displayed on the right, and altitude information on the left. On power application, the computer performs a pre-flight test. The pre-flight test sequence is indicated by PFT. On successful completion, all display segments are illuminated and the disconnect tone sounds. To engage or disengage the autopilot, press the Autopilot Engage Disengage button. Autopilot is engaged if all logic conditions are met. The autopilot then engages the basic roll mode. This functions as a wing leveler and holds the current vertical speed. To toggle between heading and roll modes, press the Heading Mode Selector button. In heading mode, the aircraft will turn to and maintain the heading selected by the heading bug on either the directional gyroscope or DG or the horizontal situation indicator or HSI. To arm the navigation mode, press the Navigation Mode Selector button. This mode provides automatic beam capture and tracking of VHF omnidirectional range or VOR, localizer or GPS as selected on the HSI or Course Deviation Indicator or CDI. To arm the approach mode, press the Approach Mode Selector button. Approach mode is recommended for instrument approaches. It provides beam capture and tracking of VOR, GPS, localizer and glide slope on an ILS. To arm the Back Course Approach mode, press the Back Course Approach Mode Selector button. This mode is similar to approach mode, but the autopilot response to localizer signals is reversed and glide slope is disabled. To select altitude hold mode, press the Altitude Hold Mode Select button. This mode maintains the current altitude. If selected with an established vertical speed rate, the aircraft is returned to the reference altitude. The Alert Annunciate illuminates 1000 feet prior to the selected altitude, extinguishes 200 feet prior to the selected altitude, and illuminates momentarily when the selected altitude is reached. An alert of 5 short tones occurs 1000 feet from the selected altitude. To increment or decrement vertical speed at a 100 feet rate, press the vertical trim buttons. The selected vertical speed is displayed on the vertical speed display. To set the altitude alerter reference altitude, rotate the inner and outer rotary knobs. To toggle altitude arming, press the altitude arm button. When armed, the autopilot will capture the altitude alert at displayed altitude. If altitude is not armed, the aircraft will continue to ascend or descend according to the vertical speed set. To view the barometric setting display, press the baro set button. The baro setting will be displayed for 3 seconds. To turn the unit on, press the on-off switch. The function switch has 3 positions: remote, frequency, and ground speed time to station. In the remote position, the unit locks on the ground station frequency set on the nav1 receiver and displays distance, ground speed, and time to station. Distance is referred to as slant range. The effective range of DME depends on the altitude of the aircraft and other contributing factors. These include the location and elevation of the station, DME transmitter power output, and receiver sensitivity. In the frequency position, the unit displays distance and the internal frequency. To change the frequency, rotate the frequency selector knobs. The outer knob changes the frequency in 1 MHz steps. When pushed in, the inner knob changes the frequency in 0.1 MHz steps. When pulled out, it changes the frequency in 0.05 MHz steps. In the ground speed time to station position, the unit will display distance, ground speed, and time to station relative to the internally selected frequency. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.